I knew we adjourned. Exactly. Well,
Just us. And Kayla will be here because it's subcommittee.
yeah, Kayla would like to.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Would you like to join us?
Yeah, come on up. Just pull, it'd be more fun to just pull chairs up right here.
I thought commissioners were automatically members of any committee, so.
They're automatically invited.
I'm good. How are you doing?
4 o'clock. All right. Let's call this meeting to order. Welcome to fellow members and to the audience. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. So today is a continuation of the conversations we've had on Hillside that have come down to a conversation about the approved graded area. And so we had some discussion of that at the last meeting. And Kayla prepared some alternatives, options 1 through 4.
Hey, wait.
Yes.
Before we get into the old business, can we adopt the agenda and approve the minute?
Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? And that's approved, and then approval of the May 3rd minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
All right.
You have to have a vote.
Let's all in favor.
Aye.
All right, me too. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for steering me. So I have spoken at some depth on this, and so I'd like to just hear from my fellow members of where they've rested at this point and questions they may have.
So if we can, so, last time we talked about different pieces of this approved graded area and the impervious surface. So, Bill, you had asked me to kind of summarize what we had talked about and a bunch of different options, which is what this sheet is that y'all have before you. And so I think it would be great if we could maybe look at them in 4 different pieces. So look at the applicability, talk about those options, look at the geotech assessment, talk about, I don't have another option for it. I don't think that should go away. And then approved graded area and development intensity, and maybe talk about those individually. Because I know Wade had brought up, I think what was a really good point, that, lot size in Montreat is small, but it's not necessarily, not every lot is small in Montreat, less than 2/10 of an acre or something like that. And so one of the things that we had discussed was potentially breaking up the regulations into applying essentially at different levels based on the lot size. And so I don't, want to just throw that away. I'd like to, if the committee will allow it, talk about these pieces individually.
You want to summarize?
Well, I mean, I don't really have a thought one way or another. But I will just kind of, if you'll allow me, go over the current requirement and then the options that we had talked about. Is that okay? All right. So the current requirement that we have, and this is, we're just talking about the approved graded area and development intensity. We are not talking about the entire Hillside Development Ordinance. That piece is not changing. The Hillside Development Ordinance will be applied to any lot with 40% slope or greater. So this is just for approved graded area and development intensity. So the current requirement is that the approved graded area and development intensity / impervious ratio regulations apply to all lots with a slope of 40% or greater, regardless of size. So that's what it currently says. One alternative is that lots subject to the ordinance, so that's anything with a 40% slope or greater, that are less than a certain size are exempt from the approved graded area and development intensity / impervious ratio regulations, except for those limits that are identified in a geotech report. So that would be anything less than a certain size is exempt from the approved graded area limits and that development intensity and impervious ratio. So that's one option. Another option is to say that any lot less than a certain size is exempt from those two requirements. And then any lot between that size and greater would be exempt from one of the requirements, and anything greater than that would be subject to both. So essentially what that second option is doing is almost giving you tiers of restriction. The smaller you are, the less restriction applies in terms of this approved graded area and development intensity. And as you get bigger, those restrictions start to kick back in. And remember, this is everything except for limits that are defined in the geotech assessment. So those are for as far as when these apply, that's what we're looking at. And the approved graded area and development intensity and impervious ratio limits. I didn't recommend any changes to the numbers specifically, but I did, really it relies on the applicability of when it applies.
Any thoughts?
I think after reading through our minutes again, studying those, which they were really good. Thank you. Just brought back the meeting very well. And reading through the new draft twice now, and I want to do it again, and just really looking at it. And to be quite honest and transparent, I'm not convinced that we need to change anything. That's just my first thought. I'm not convinced that we need to change anything. That's just my first thought.
So Liz, you would say that the approved graded area and development intensity / impervious ratio requirements would continue to apply regardless of lot size?
as
Okay.
they are. The one reason that I think that comes to my mind almost even more at this meeting than the last is that reading through the new comprehensive plan, you can just sense that the issues of, and I know these are different topics with different ordinances, et cetera, is stormwater, erosion, sediment, other things besides just the aesthetics, the viewscape, etc. That are, it's almost like this big picture from the first meeting we had where I said, you know, you've got erosion, sediment, everything is interconnected. We can't just do one piece. And then there was one comment I made, and I should have written down the page number in the draft, that almost gave you that maybe there were people that wondered if we had enough restrictions, which surprised me. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but you know, I do think it's a concern. So I thus far I'm not convinced that we need to change what we have right now.
And I felt like after reading the draft, I felt like after reading, is it on? After reading the draft of the plan, I felt like too, they weren't encouraging sustained development. They understood that there would be development, but Montreat is not one of these communities that wants to just explode. So I ended up thinking I'm just leave it.
Well, said the minority. I have been in this profession for over 50 years, and I have been a full-time resident of Montreat for 24, and 1/3 of those 24 years I've been on the Planning and Zoning Commission. 6 years this time, and a couple of years many years ago. And I have, over the course of that time, been inspired or felt called upon to point out those areas that those of us who were here might be taking some advantage of how we structured things, so it was hard for anybody else to get here. And so 6 years ago, when we sort of organized and went through the ordinance, I prepared a lot of material for that, put together things, and just identified stormwater and Hillside as two ordinances that, in my opinion and in my experience, and being familiar with Montreat, both as an architect and as a builder in Montreat, that there were two requirements that were so severe as they result in a legal but an effective stopping the property from being developed or reasonably developed. So on this issue, I have prepared exhibits for many of those years. And in each case, it was a mathematic three-dimensional exhibit. That this is the size of a lot. This is how much smaller the lot is once you bring in the setbacks. This is how much smaller it is if you bring in other restrictions, stream setbacks, and so forth. And I have shown in drawing after drawing that a quarter-acre lot at 40% can be reduced to the only reasonable buildable area is a two-car garage with an apartment above it. And that is not how these lots were established. They were established by a church organization with a purpose of attracting people who might be supporting the church operation. And thankfully, that's sort of what's happened for over 100 years. A few Methodists sneak in every now and again, but it's all worked out just fine. Billy Graham got here by marrying the Presbyterian. And so it's all been good. There is nobody that I know in this town that wants to take property away from somebody else, unless it's perhaps your next door neighbor in a particular issue. There's no malice. But there's a great deal of comfort in keeping things the way we are. And what rang my bell years ago was I was new here and I was seeing people who wanted to come here who identified property, but they couldn't. And there were a number of ordinances that were written in such ways and then interpreted in other ways that just sent them home, packing. I raised a fuss and those ordinances all got changed over the course of time. But we did put in the Hillside ordinance and the stormwater ordinance to address real issues, but we added some things to them that others didn't. And on Hillside, which I need to stick to, we dealt with the safety. We dealt with even erosion in the sense that you've got to have, we have a stormwater ordinance that says you've got to protect the property, and we require geotech engineers. And so there is not going to be a bunch of rapid growth in Montreat. It can't be. Everything is wrapped up in conservation, green space, woodlands, setbacks, stormwater restrictions, hillside restrictions. And so the few lots that might be affected by this may be just about the only lots available for anybody who might want to come to town. And I've had an electronic level that I've held up that shows that 40% is about this, and that's manageable. And that what takes this property away from neighbors being able to come here is the approved grading area, taking out so much of land, 45% of the land can't be touched, can't be disturbed. And so I've done the drawings that show it. I've done sections and so forth. And I haven't found us getting in discussions. Well, let me look at the drawings and let me look at where it requires cutting and filling. And I haven't had that. I've had the response, it seems, has been, well, I think we need to keep things the way we are, or there are other reasons to have these restrictions. And those of us who control everything are Montreat residents who already have a stake here. My stake in Montreat will remain for about 16 more days when we'll move out of town. And then when we get our house finished, not too much after that, we'll move back close to town. And so my term on the Planning Zone Commission will rightly end probably with tomorrow's meeting, as I won't be a resident of town as is required. But there is no malice. There is no meanness. There is the natural tendency to love this place. And I think that clouds the vision that founded it. It was founded as a church institution. All these lots were assembled with tithes, with offerings from folks who wanted to see folks come here. We have converted a lot of those into conservation. And my family helped in that. And I've contributed to that. But I'm talking about reasonably developable lots. We don't have to prevent folks from coming here. We've been pretty lucky at the quality of folks who have come here. And the most cantankerous citizens we've ever found ourselves identifying weren't new folks. They were folks from families that always did. And I just don't think there's a threat. And I think we can be generous. And I think that we are overvaluing our own interests against the broader interest. we are of a community that really is welcoming. If someone gets a permit and builds next to you, they're welcome. But it's the folks who aren't even able to apply for a permit because of ordinances that stop us. I'm certainly not concerned about whether or not I was clear in what my thinking is. And respect everybody here. And I wish we had a broader view of it. Anyway, that's my thinking.
Well, so I mean, I don't think this is something that necessarily needs to be decided today. I mean, I think I'm hearing, you know, the majority doesn't want to change it. I mean, I think it's possible as we continue to move through the ordinance to revisit this. If, you know, things become, if, you know, new information is found or things like that. The other suggestion that I was going to make, just after kind of looking at this again is, you know, another option would be, because, okay, so if y'all remember from when we had reviewed the ordinance, I think it was back in January, the recommendation that I had made was to look at, you know, balancing the development and environmental protection. And I can't remember where I put that, but I mean, just speaking from like a planning perspective, and again, like, you know, the visuals that Wade had provided and when we had gone over the ordinance, that further constricting development envelope. Just to be frank, I don't know if we need both on lots that are small, that are under a certain size. I hear you guys, and I think, you know, better safe than sorry. But just speaking from trying to find more of that balance between the development and the environmental protection, I just see having specifically the development intensity ratio, because that further collapses the building envelope. I mean, the approved graded area, I mean, to me, those numbers feel a little bit arbitrary. So they could be raised, they could be lowered, they could be left alone. But to me, just personally, my sticking point with this ordinance is the development intensity. Because it's hard enough to build within a compact, like a compressed graded area. But it's even more difficult to then put your footprint on an even smaller area. And now when we're talking about lots that may meet the actual minimum lot size requirement that are 1 and 2 acres, you know, again, that's like finding a unicorn in one tree. I have no problem imposing both of those standards. But again, when we talk about balancing these two, I don't know if, you know, and I'm just kind of rambling here, but I don't know if on these really tiny lots, if that balance is truly equal. But I also think that, you know, when we talk about getting rid of the potentially development intensity and impervious ratio, we're talking about impervious surface. So additional requirements could be proposed. So one example could be, you know, if you are on a lot less than a certain size and you want to develop more, you want more impervious surface than your impervious ratio allows you, you could propose over and above best management practices for your stormwater, or propose some sort of low impact development. And, you know, we could define that in the ordinance to what that would look like. And then you could get your impervious ratio raised. So just, you know, some options for a little bit of flexibility. Because again, at the end of the day, and Wade did make this point, that it's the geotechnical assessment that we're really relying on in terms of safety. It is that engineer putting their career, their profession, their education, their livelihood on the line when they stamp those plans and that study. And I agree. I mean, like I said, the approved graded area personally, just from working with the ordinance, I do think it's a little restrictive, but my biggest beef is with the impervious ratio. Because when I have conversations with people and they ask me, well, what can I do with my property? It's over 40% slope. The real kind of hard part of the conversation comes when I have to tell them about the impervious ratio. And so not saying it should go away, but there may be some options for more flexibility.
Wouldn't they have known some of that when they purchased the property?
A lot of this is people looking to buy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do have conversations with people
Yeah.
who have bought property.
Because when you buy property, you need to do your, yeah. Okay. So it's people that are looking to build.
Looking
not-
and people who own property, more the former than the latter.
Okay.
Some people I got this property from, my family member.
Right.
And
right.
now I'm in this position.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Yeah.
So I don't think getting rid of it
Mhm.
necessarily is the right move, but maybe there's something in there that we could do as far as, finding that balance when we're dealing with lots that are super tiny. In terms of, okay, if we get rid of this, now we have this concern. Like if we get rid of impervious surface, runoff, stormwater, erosion, sediment control, could we look then at an applicant saying, well, I'll do above and beyond what I would normally do for stormwater?
Where does that fit in with the variations, the opportunity that
Yeah.
they can ask for variations and
I think that would be part of it.
also another thing is at least the two documents or documents that you had sent us, one from Land of Sky, which is excellent. And those in the audience, she gave us which we could give you reference for if you want it. But it's interesting because when you look at Western North Carolina and these groups coming together about how are we going to develop responsibly and preserve the, where we live, they really discourage things over 40%. And that's not me saying that. That's not a personal issue. That's, around the board sort of. And so, and Wade, I truly have great respect for you and your talents and the impact that you've had on this community. And I know this is difficult and I just want you to know that. I am a multi-generational person here. And one thing I loved about the new comprehensive plan is how welcome people feel when they did the survey. And so I was glad to see that. But so, we're just working together, trying to represent the community, do the best we can. And it's not really just wanting to do same old, same old. This is with a lot of thought and a lot of study and also listening to the community.
So
Can I ask a question?
can I answer one
Oh,
thing
sure.
Liz said first?
Yeah.
So Liz, when you talked about the variations, that was one part in here that, I feel like some of those decisions in there are a little bit discretionary. So it is something that is another section I do want to look at. So I wonder if maybe then, when we
Yeah.
do look at those discretionary decisions, if maybe at that point we could revisit opening up some of these envelopes, because I hear your concern and I agree with you. I think, there is evidence by these reports that have been prepared throughout the region of the concern. So believe me, I hear that. And, so I think that I just ask everyone to just continue to have an open mind, especially, as we do move through the ordinance and talk about some of these different sections that I identified as being maybe points of discussion, that maybe there are points where we could go back and look at, these two pieces, because they are the most restrictive to development on these properties, and just think about whether there are variations that could be offered. What scenarios do those work in? How can we clearly define those and put them in a box so that either they could be offered at an administrative level, or if it does require some other sort of a permit or approval. So, yeah, go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Two things. Number one, you rely on just with the geotechnical engineer, which I was trying to do. It's not just his reputation. He's going to speed. So he's going to balance that reputation. He's going to stay within the reputation. He's going to try to help us. He or she going to try to help that. So that sort of balances that off. So you don't really know.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Let me,
Then I had a question. In section 1(3)(a), and this has to go with applicability.
Mhm.
Current requirement, entire ordinance applies to lots with a slope of 42 foot. Blah, blah, blah. But 3(a) says that the whole none of the regulations apply to land disturbing activities involving property with existing slopes less than 40%.
Right.
So
So
then you look at the table down here, and you go down to existing. Then you go down to the existing table and look at number 3. 40%, 45%, and then you got 45%, 50. Oh, those are all over. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah, and then the
So it doesn't
ordinance.
apply to anything under
No,
40%.
no.
Okay.
And that's how it's written now. And the ordinance asks us to interpret the percentages of grade in the table as 40% to 45% will include all slopes, 40% up to any slope less than 45%. So yes, and that's how it is right now.
Okay.
Wait, did you want?
yeah, just a point. Engineers have a different penalty if they compromise the life safety issues.
Lawyers have a penalty too, but they have clients.
Well, lawyers have clients that are murderers and they can get them off. The engineer's responsibility to make sure nobody does die.
They might want to murder the lot.
They might want to murder the people on the planning commission or something, who knows?
Probably.
But you know, Commissioner Blake is here, and I said, looking at an ordinance that restricts, it is math. It might be the Pope, you want to say. That it is math. And Commissioner Blake, they can be feeling like things are going along real well, but every year they have to have an audit of actual numbers. And so they've got to look at the math. And no matter how optimistic they may feel, those numbers say, well, this is where you got to put the brakes on, or this is where you can ease off. For me, when you've got a restriction that effectively prevents anybody from reasonably using the land, we need to say, we don't want you to use the land, rather than just have an ordinance. It's difficult to understand until you sit down with Kayla or somebody else and they say, well, you really can't develop on this lot. We need to say that we are reducing lots with a 40% slope to structure size that likely shouldn't be bigger than a 2-car garage. If you wanted more than that for a house, you need to be somewhere else. And that was not how we were chartered. We were chartered with modesty. There were going to be plenty of folks that could come here because it's a small lot and they wouldn't have much, couldn't afford much. And some folks could buy multiple lots and that was fine, have more. But we're to ignore the math of it, I think is not right.
I think, Wade, though, the technology we have today is so different than when Montreat started. And so don't we need to think about that some too? These small lots, but we're talking about 40% or greater that, the reality might be that it's not the best thing to build a home there. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Kayla, it's your point.
Mhm.
Reconsider this, and if you want to it would be nice to see it all written out when we consider the ordinance as a whole, so we can see where things lie. And in other words, write it into the ordinance, so we redline it, so we can see the change
So,
as proposed.
yes, I'm a little confused. So I thought we weren't changing this section.
That's what we're saying, but if you wanted to consider it later, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I just, I think, if for right now, the majority has decided no, I think that's okay. But I want you guys to keep an open mind as we do move to talking about things like the variations, because there may be things in there that we could do to open the development envelope, a little bit more and make it very clear what the expectation is, what the approval process is, what we'd be looking for. So yeah, certainly, Bill, when it comes time to, proposing changes like that, certainly I'll give you guys a redlined copy for sure that we can look at. Yeah. But just keep this alternative options sheet handy, and just as we do talk about these variations and other things of that nature, just consider different lot sizes, and I'm not saying get rid of any of the requirements, but just something to increase flexibility if the applicant is open to doing something that addresses the concern that is then essentially created by relaxing the development envelope. So just keep that in mind as we move forward, and these don't have to be blanket provisions. They can apply to lots under a certain size, between a certain size, of a certain slope. When we look at these specifically when we look at the variations, if there is something that we think would be okay at a smaller scale, but concerning at a larger scale, certainly we can put this is only for lots under a certain size, under a certain slope, or something like that. So yeah, certainly there's a lot of different ways that we could go with this, and like I said, just keep an open mind and consider that balance. So okay, so I mean, I guess that's where we've kind of landed on those.
What is our next step?
Well, the only other thing that I had on the agenda today was to set the next meeting date. But I think it would be good to talk about maybe where we want to go next.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Like, our sheet with the 5, which
Yeah.
I cannot find in front of me right now. That had wasn't it like 5 topics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
can't find it.
So
Didn't we have it in here?
yeah,
Yes.
it's that the
last.
very last sheet. So yeah, the next one to talk about was the development density table. But we also have 2 other topics as well, the LRV regulations, which is the light reflective value, and then discretionary decisions, which is really where we get into the variations. So what I would recommend is, because we are still in this realm of talking about approved graded area and the building envelope, is to maybe move into talking about the variations. So when I say variations, I mean, for example, applicants may request up to a 50% increase in approved graded area if accompanied by a landscape plan detailing adequate revegetation of the disturbed area to offset negative impacts of disturbance. So things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Since we are kind of on this topic,
That would be good.
to not only clarify, but also to look for other opportunities that we can offer more flexibility where appropriate. So that would be my recommendation to the group, but I'll leave it up to you guys.
Well, before getting to all of the future, do we want to take any positions on numbers 2, 3, and 4 of what was today?
I mean,
We can consider them later, I guess.
number two, there's no change that I would recommend. I think you need that geotech analysis. And then 3 and 4 would only have changed if number 1 changed. Yeah, so I think inadvertently we've done that.
So we don't need to vote.
I don't think so. I mean,
It's up to us.
yeah.
Well, I will partially repeat, but maybe say it another way. I think Montreat has an extraordinary citizens. We're all lucky to be among them. I believe that these ordinances, particularly this graded area, stops reasonable development on a very developable lot. 40% is very developed. It stops it. And I believe that the good citizens of this town are comfortable with the fact that it stops it because they're not really aware of all the math. They're not really aware of what it might mean to somebody. I believe that the same citizens, if they met the person who's about to be turned away, and they met their family and realized it was them, like them, they said, well, yeah, I guess we'll be fine. That they've got to take the trees out in whatever area, they've got to take it out to build a house, and every house that builds here is a mess. They disturb the dirt and all that sort of stuff, and every house is built here heals in very nicely. And when we walk around, if we got picky, there's an awful lot of scrappiness, but we just sort of love the intimacy of it, the curvy roads, and we love the mix of people. And we are talking about very few lots. But I do know the math. That is my area, and we're putting the brakes on just a very few lots. When we have 175,000 acres around us protected, we've got a conservation area from the ridge tops. We've got woodlands, green space, building setbacks, and so forth. We have protected like crazy. And the fact that that's not enough, I think, does not comport with who we really are. If we really did know the circumstances of the people who were turned away, not by us, we don't have to say it. Kayla tells us. As I've mentioned before, I've had people come to me and I've told them, well, this is what the ordinance says, and they walked away from their deposit on the lot. So they walk away from $5,000, how much they pay on the lot, because they realize they can't use it. As long as we don't know it, we don't have to feel bad about it. But I feel very strongly that we can do better. We're good people and we can do better. And I don't have any question about how today's meeting's going. I appreciate everybody's time. If I'm moving between all these storage units, I have a full pickup truck load of exhibits I've prepared over the last 24 years. And I feel like Charlie Brown in that football. I don't know anybody that ever looked upstairs. But I gave it my best shot. So I think it probably is important that we voice our consensus. Since, I won't be in another meeting with the subcommittee. I'd like to hear a motion as to what anybody would like to make. And I think we ought to go ahead and vote on that, and I'll at least get that piece on the record as I read. For whatever it's worth doing.
Well, Kayla, like what you had said, is that something you'd rather hold in abeyance, or would you rather tentatively vote subject?
If you guys wanna make a motion, that's fine. And, if we're not adopting anything. This isn't formally an amendment yet. So if you guys want to just, if you want to make a motion on it for now, we can.
I I would make a motion that we, at this time, not change the ordinance, but keep it open. Tell me if I am wording this right or
Not change the approved graded.
the
area.
approved graded area and the
And-
intensity ratio as
Standard.
is written right now.
Subject to reconsider.
Subject to reconsideration during the ordinance examination process. How's that sound? Okay.
Second. Um, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And I oppose. Thank you both. And thank you all in the audience. We have next meeting, new business, public comment. I don't know. I would say that that's up to you if you want to do by next meeting. You won't have two on the committee.
Does the committee have to have members of the commission?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Is it required to be members?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, I got
Okay.
put down for that suggestion earlier. So we decided we can't do that.
Okay. Well, we don't have to, you don't have to leave now, but we'll see what,
Right. I got 16 days. 2 doctor's appointments. Probably part of it. All right, public comment.
Just really quick, Wade. So Rule 26 says, all, so this is for making appointments to planning. This is for making appointments to planning and zoning, committees. All nominees shall be, commission members. Yeah.
Thank you.
Unless North Carolina law or town ordinance permits the appointment of non-commission members, but I'm not aware of any law or ordinance that allows that right now.
I'm all for law and order. So, public comment. Do we have any public comment? We have public. This now, again.
Directly, mostly towards you, Wade. I know your passion for this and how you've just been there on the commissions a lot and in planning and zoning. And I want to say appreciation from me and I know from the community for your time. And we wish you a lot of success.
Thank you. Y'all come visit me in the annexation area. Dead end of Graybeard. So, any further business, any further comments?
Well, I would,
Did-
in light of what Ms. Alexander said, I'd like to move the fact that.
Yeah.
Turns out that can't proceed. I'd like to move that we,
Use the microphone.
we do away with all microphones.
Mhm.
Move that we thank the chairman for his service and look forward to maybe him continuing to work through that, which we've read governance. But thank you. So I'd move that we.
And I'll second that.
Do I have a, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Oops.
Do you guys want to set a next meeting date, or we just want to postpone until, I guess until the Planning and Zoning Commission appoints another member? Until the next regular meeting?
That would make the most sense
Yeah,
for the commission to.
Maybe we can add that as
yeah.
a substitute agenda tomorrow.
No. It's a
No.
special meeting tomorrow.
Oh,
We only have, we're not doing a minute, we're not approving minutes, nothing. It's just the comp plan.
oh,
It's a special meeting. At the next regular meeting, though, I can add it to the
okay,
agenda.
okay.
Motion to adjourn,
Yeah.
so second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye,
Aye. Aye.
and that was a vote. Aye, 3 ayes. Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you, Wade.
All right.